Hi, my name is Mike and I'm here to read a comic. Today's comic is Young Love, issue number 104, dated July 1973. And two stories of love, so they're a little bit more elongated than something you would normally see, say, from Charleston or most of DC's other romance comics. This is a DC romance comic. And the first story, centering it, is a crying nun who is being, I guess, somewhat comforted by this really kind of good looking ginger who tells her, "I know you love me. Admit it." And, this nun, she's thinking, I didn't know your name was Jesus. And this story is called Veil of Love, or You Ain't Getting None. And then we have a second story that is almost quite as disturbing as this one. So I'm going to go into it. So I'm going to look at the splash page to the Veil of Love. And our creative team is Robert Kanger. Oh, so the writer is Robert Kanigher, and the art is by John Rosenberg and Vince Colletta. Vince did a pretty good job here. I don't really have a problem with his inking. In fact, if he inked other stories as well as he did this one, his name probably would not be hated as much in comic book circles. And so we're going to look at the transformation of Lee. Lee is someone who had been fighting in the jungles of Vietnam. We could see here he is in a violent struggle for life against an enemy combatant. And next, and apparently this happened just a few months later, we see that Lee is also lying flat on his back, but in a positive way, as this beautiful blonde is hovering over him. Very similar to that famous scene in the movie From Here to Eternity, which is a great movie. And it has that classic scene with Burt Lancaster and Deborah Kerr. So this is definitely a play on that. And she is quite smitten with Lee here. And she knows that Lee is someone who had served in Vietnam, and she sees that as a positive. She is like, "You are my war hero." And she is just making herself available to Lee here. However, Lee has some apprehension about embracing that hero status because he's telling her the real heroes are dead. I'm not. So Lee is a guy who we can see he sort of has his own ideas as what is, a hero or how he should define his service. Gonna turn the page. So we see Lee here. He's with another date. This guy has no problem finding female company. And again, this is another woman who looks at Lee as kind of a long-term prospect. She wants to know whether, is she actually in the game or is she on the sideline? Meaning, am I the side piece or am I the masterpiece? She wants to know that. She also knows that Lee had also served, and again, she finds this kind of hot. So we see that Lee and the new girl, since we're not given a name, are embracing in a kiss. Gonna turn the page. So Lee is on another date with another young woman. This is an attractive blonde. And Lee is taking her on a ride on his motorcycle. He doesn't actually have a destination in terms of where to go. He's just enjoying the moment. But it appears that Lee's date doesn't really mind this sort of directionalist type of experience. She's like, I'm going to go anywhere with you. That is where I want to go with you. And she's saying, as long as it's fast, fast, fast. Again, she's one of these girls that enjoys adrenaline. And she sees Lee, this is a combat hero in her eyes, and that guy knows something about adrenaline. And, we kind of get an idea from the way that Lee is riding his motorcycle here that, he is a guy who loves adrenaline. So anyway, the two stop and they're enjoying the environment that they're in right now. They're enjoying the night. They're enjoying their company. And Lee's date is asking, hey, why did you take me out here? I mean, yeah, I asked, I'll go anywhere, but we're kind of stuck nowhere. And she senses that Lee is kind of like tuning her out a little bit, because it seems like she's concerned that Lee is just going to spend the night kind of just dwelling on the thoughts in his own head and kind of enjoying the night and kind of like not really wanting to pay much attention to her. Lee is saying, that's ridiculous. I'm into you. I'm not turned off at all. And then she makes her move. So she takes the pearl necklace that is around her neck, and she also simultaneously places it on Lee's neck. So the two are kind of they're kind of bonded together with this necklace, which of course draws them closer and closer and closer to the two are embracing. And once again, this is a young woman who sees Lee as a war hero. And, she wants to know, hey, soldier, am I going to get a little action here? Going to turn the page. So the two embrace. She's a beautiful blonde. Lee's date, this nameless, beautiful young woman who will disappear, she is just passionately into Lee at this time. However, the issue is really with Lee at this point. Lee is attracting these beautiful young women, but he's not able to commit. And he feels a kind of a quiet storm in his head. He can't let go of the experiences that he had in war, in being in foxholes. So he's sort of showing a bit of post-traumatic stress syndrome here. And this is an idea that had started taking root around this time. Or I should say it's a diagnosis that started taking root at this time. Because the general public was kind of ignorant about the effects that war would have on individuals. And the idea that, it does change people, fundamentally was sort of a new idea at the time. So Lee, we're seeing him, he's going through clearly some traumatic stress here. Gonna turn the page. So he's with another date. Beautiful redhead here. Again, she's one of these chicks that's, she's into adrenaline and she's into war heroes, because they're at a shooting game here at the Carney. And Lee's date is kind of comfortable shooting a rifle, but she wants to see how well Lee can shoot a rifle. Because she's like, hey, listen, I heard you're a war guy. I heard you kind of murked some guys. I want to see how good you aim so I can visualize those things. To a guy like Robert Kanigher and his era, this is the perfect woman. And but we see that Lee, he's having a moment here where he's not comfortable firing the rifle. It's probably just an air rifle aimed at some plates. But nevertheless, he can't do it. And he sees the faces of those that he had to face when he was in Vietnam and when he was, armed and ready to kill. So he's having some survivor's guilt here. Lee kind of gets an out by saying, listen, I've done this enough. I don't need to fire another gun. I've done more than that for a lifetime. And Lee's saying, listen, I want to have fun with you. I want to do something that's enjoyable. I don't want to do work. You know, I was a soldier. That was my full-time job. You're asking me to do work for you. So we're going to go to the fun house. And they go to the fun house. We could see the distorted mirrors here as Lee and his beautiful date, probably looks like a little like Jill St. John. They are embraced in a kiss. She is passionately into Lee and this moment. But once again, Lee's thoughts are somewhat removed because he's mentioning the snake pit. Snake pit, well, there was that one scene in Cobra Kai that had a snake pit. That was a great miniseries. But I think the idea with snake pits back then was... or guys of Robert Kanger's era, was that if a traumatic event drove somebody crazy, they would take that individual and throw them into a snake pit, like Indiana Jones, with the idea that, you know, hey, if a traumatic event screwed them up, another traumatic event will reverse that. And they found out, you know, the human mind doesn't work that. It just made the trauma worse. But that's, I think, what the reference is. Going to turn the page. So we see Lee. He's riding his motorcycle. He's alone. He's alone with his thoughts, and he's thinking out loud. Because, as I said, the heroes think out loud. The villains talk to themselves. But Lee is thinking out loud. And, you know, again, it's those experiences in the war. And he feels that it's suffocating. He's having all these flashbacks and these memories of what had happened in Vietnam, and he feels like those memories are suffocating him, that he can't escape them. So as he's riding, he suddenly slows down in front of this hotel. He sees the hotel's pool, and he sees this beautiful brunette diving into the water. And Lee cannot believe his eyes. And, you know, when he sees her, he sees an angel. So the thing is that when Lee came in and saw her, she was in mid-dive. So she looks like an angel floating to earth in Lee's eyes. He notices that, you know, she just sort of just dived into the water without making a splash. So again, he's taking this as kind of a divine signal. And then he's watching her swim. You know, most women get kind of creeped out by this. But, you know, Lee's in his own thoughts thinking, this woman's like a mermaid. I almost expect her to be half fish under there and sniffing that fish. And yeah, okay, maybe those thoughts are a little... Turn the page. Take a look at this one ad. It's for rings. Again, female readership. And yeah, this is something that they could sell in these love comics that they probably could not sell in the superhero comics. So going to get back to the story. Lee is creepily looking at this beautiful young woman in a white swimsuit. It's not a bikini. It's a one-piece suit. But nevertheless, we could see that she's a very beautiful woman, beautiful shape, beautiful brunette hair, kind of looks like a young Jacqueline Smith here. And the young woman has noticed Lee creeping on her. However, she doesn't say anything to Lee, and she just sort of walks away. So she doesn't feel uncomfortable with Lee's presence there. But at the same time, Lee's like, hold it. I'm an awesome guy. I'm a war hero. Why isn't she paying attention to me? So this is a mystery, you know, to Lee, who is like, you know, the quintessential chick magnet. So anyway, Lee heads to the entrance of the hotel. It looks like one of these lodges. And we're told that this is Lone Lake. And Lee goes to the reception desk. Obviously, he figures, hey, If she's swimming in the hotel pool, she's probably a guest. If she's a guest, I want to be where she is, because that's the only way I'm going to meet this woman who I think is my soulmate. Lee is talking to the receptionist. She's an attractive brown-haired woman. She has a nice little smile. And she's telling Lee that, listen, we don't have any single accommodations, but a room of two just became a room of one because the guest had to leave early. We can make arrangements for you to share that bed. We can turn that single room into a hostel. Maybe they should kind of ask the guest who's currently there. But apparently, these rules were a little different in the 1970s. So the receptionist is telling Lee, if you don't mind sharing a bed, we have a place for you. Lee's saying that's okay. I'm in the military. I'm from, I served in the military, so I'm used to sleeping with a lot of guys in a barrack, and he'll take this offer. You can turn the page. So anyway, it's the next morning. It looks like the hotel offers a continental breakfast. Hampton Inn, that is my hotel of choice, and I love their continental breakfast. So anyway, it looks like everyone's having a really good time here. Lee is heading to the cafeteria area. He sees the attractive young receptionist who checked him in. And the receptionist is saying that, listen, we're kind of an informal, relaxed group here. So, I work here, we have an employee-guest relationship, but, we're not stuck up on it. And, would you mind, kind of having breakfast with me, Lee? We'll talk about what the sites are and any questions that you may have about your stay, and we'll kind of get to know each other, because I think you're kind of a really cool guy. You're groovy, as Marsha Brady would say. Lee says, thanks, but I see where I want to sit already. And Lee sees the young woman that he saw swimming the night before, and she's enjoying her breakfast. There is a seat available. Lee just sits in saying, listen, do you mind if I sit here and kind of dine with you, since this is a small dining area? The young woman smiles and she nods yes to Lee, but she doesn't speak directly to Lee. And, he's confused by this. What's this nonverbal communication thing? Also, during the course of breakfast, she is not making any type of eye contact with Lee. Lee is concerned about this. He put on his best ascot, and he doesn't know why he's being ignored. His sense of entitlement for, the attention of an attractive woman has really gotten to this guy a bit. And then the young woman, she gets up and she just leaves. She's like, I'm going to enjoy my day and I don't have to report to you. Lee is like, she wasn't interested in me. She didn't say a word to me. What's wrong with this? This is not what I imagined. I imagined my angel is going to reflect upon me. This is like when people they imagine that, when they encounter their God is going to know about them. And Lee's like, she didn't want to know anything about me. So as she's walking away, the young receptionist intercepts Lee at the table. And, she's asking Lee, hey, Lee, is everything okay? She's clearly sending signals that, hey, you can talk to me. And Lee wants to know who the young woman was that had walked away. And the receptionist says, oh, that's Teresa Brand. And Teresa is apparently a guest. And the receptionist just gave that information. I know her name was given earlier. I think it's Susan. Yeah, it's Suzanne. So Suzanne, the receptionist, kind of like snitched out Teresa there to the stalker, Lee. Gonna turn the page. Take a look at this ad. This is like one of these things. I guess you get free samples of stuff by being in part of this survey. I guess this is how they did marketing back then. And they give away products, sample products, and they would ask, hey, how you like it? Is there any way we can improve it? One of the big selling points here is that they're offering free pantyhose, and it's, quote, an incredible $2.50 value, just so you can try them out. Yeah, and if you don't like them, send them back to me. Unwashed. So yeah, they're saying, listen, you want to be a part of this. I guess this mini limited marketing company, LLM. I don't know what they're called. So we're gonna go back to the story. This very well drawn story, I should say. So anyway, Lee and the receptionist Suzanne, they're talking. Lee is telling Suzanne that Teresa's a strange girl, because she's ignoring me. And that's pretty much it. Suzanne is saying, listen, she keeps to herself. It's not all about you, asshole. I mean, my future love. But Suzanne offered that maybe Teresa was kind of recovering from a bad breakup. And that's the reason why, she's sort of like not available right now. Suzanne also volunteers that she doesn't have to report to the reception desk until this afternoon, so she's free. She's free from this time on. She wants to know whether Lee kind of wants to play some tennis or kind of go swimming. Lee says, "Listen, I've had too much exercise, and I'll take a rain check, and I'll be seeing you." And we see Suzanne. She's very upset about this. She has little tears in her eyes as Lee is walking away in his pursuit of Teresa. So anyway, as Lee is walking through this kind of rustic area, he encounters Teresa with a stranger. And it's clear at this point, this stranger's advances are completely unwanted. And Teresa's pleading, no, please stop, don't do this. The man in question is saying, stop playing hard to get with me, baby. And we see Lee, he sees Teresa in danger. He notes that it's her. And this might have been another woman. Lee might have been, I gotta look for Teresa. But nevertheless, he found the woman he was stalking, and he breaks up this probably attempted grape here. Lee grabs the culprit in a kind of a headlock here. So Lee has his arm around his throat. He also has another one of his hands holding his right hand. So at this point, he has the upper hand. This culprit is not on Teresa, and Teresa's kind of startled at the moment, but she's thankful that Lee came here to save her from this. Gonna turn the page. So anyway, Lee is really pressing his advantage here. He is starting to choke this individual here, and Teresa's actually making a plea for mercy on the behalf of this culprit. And Teresa's saying, listen, you're killing the guy here. You need to stop. And the thing is, Lee actually turns it on more. So what he does is he takes the culprit, who he already has by the neck, and he flips him over on his back. And not only, he put that extra pressure on his neck, but he slammed him to the ground here. The culprit looks to be unconscious or barely conscious as he's holding his neck. Teresa's concern is actually with the culprit, and she's not really showing Lee any concern at all. Lee is resentful of this. He's saying, "Yeah, you want him, you take him, sure thing." And he says, "Listen, I know I've been made a fool, and that's the guy you really want, and so you can have him there." Gonna turn the page. So Lee's being a bit of a dick. So anyway, Lee is looks like Lee has been out here for a few hours. He's been sitting on a log. He's been thinking to himself, what a fool he is. That he tried to rescue this young woman, and she turns on him in his eyes, and and Lee feels just really bad about this. He's kind of like kind of sounds like he's souring on all women everywhere. But then as Lee is going through his misogynist thoughts, he's hit from behind by the culprit from earlier. And the culprit is saying, "Listen, I remember you. You caught me by surprise. But, when I can get the drop on you, I can crack your skull open." So the culprit uses a very large wooden branch to knock Lee unconscious. However, we see Teresa is right behind him, and she's pleading for this culprit to stop attacking Lee. So apparently these two have spent some time together. I don't know. My guess is maybe Teresa was following this bully, but the bully is surprised that Teresa's there. So yeah, that's probably what happened. Is that this guy started following Lee, and then Teresa started following the grapist. The grapist, he's about to attack Lee some more. He kind of just wants to kill him. Teresa throws herself onto Lee and saying that if you need to kill someone, kill me. I am the human shield here. Apparently, the grapist, he has a second thought about what he was planning on doing. He lets go of the wooden branch, and he simply walks away. So, this act of courage had touched him to the point where he just kind of called off the attack. Teresa is now showing all her concern to Lee here, as she notices that he's bleeding. I'm going to turn the page. So Lee, he regains consciousness, and he's kind of confused by the way Teresa's acting, because Lee was like, "I thought you liked him." Teresa's saying, "Listen, I couldn't let you hurt him, even though you were trying to defend me. I would feel so guilty that someone was going to be hurt on my behalf, even though that's kind of a guy who deserves being hurt that way." But she's also saying that I never encountered that individual before. We had never seen each other before until that moment. So it's not like he's a spurned lover, so to speak. This was a complete stranger. Teresa also tells Lee that she's a nurse, and she wants to know how Lee is. Lee's saying, "Listen, I've been through worse. Because remember, I'm a war hero." And Lee then confesses that he can't keep Teresa out of his mind. And when he first saw her, he was like, "Baby, I see possibilities with you, and you're the one for me. I kind of fixated on you." And looks like Lee wants to get closer to Teresa to embrace and have a kiss. But Teresa stops that. She's saying, "I can't do that." And but she's still willing to help Lee here. So she helps Lee to his feet. Lee's still kind of wobbly here because he had that serious head injury. And Teresa says that you might have a concussion, and it'd be best if we took you to some type of medical help, even if it's like the hotel infirmary. And this is a hotel that might have, like, say, a nurse on staff. But Teresa's telling Lee to take short breaths, slow, short breaths, and that he can lean on her, and she won't let him fall. And this is what Lee wants to hear. that, you will be my crutch and I can count on you for the rest of my life. I knew I was right thinking you are my soulmate because you're validating it right here, unintentionally. Gonna turn the page. So anyway, I think some time has passed. The hotel doctor checked Lee out, said you're fine, and you just need a good night's sleep. That's what you need after a concussion, a good night's sleep, and hopefully you'll wake up. I mean, you should wake up. So Lee's telling Teresa that the doc says I just need a little sleep. Teresa's saying you mustn't. Oh no. So anyway, Lee is telling Teresa that the doc felt that some sleep would help, and Lee is saying I've also been thinking about you. Teresa's saying no, you can't do that. Don't have those thoughts in your head. Lee is saying that he would never hurt her. This is totally out of nowhere. So Teresa says I know, and Lee is saying trust me. Teresa says I do. And Lee says, you must feel what I do. I love you. Teresa says, you can't. Lee doesn't understand this, saying everything is pointing to love. What's going on with you? The problem is clearly with you. But Teresa is just putting as much cold water as possible. And then she walks away. Lee's telling Teresa that I'll still be stalking you. And, that should mean something to you, that I'm going to be obsessively thinking about you. Going to turn the page. Quick look at the music club ad that were very popular. I talked about these all the time. Kids were buying Donny Osmond, Cher, Liza Minnelli, Three Dog Night, Bread, Jesus Christ Superstar, Rod Stewart, Neil Diamond. Yeah, that's a great movie, Song Sung Blue. Get a chance to see it. And then the second page to this ad, again, more Cher, Carpenters, Carole King, and how you can, it explains the Columbia House scam here. So anyway, we're going to get back to the story. Lee appears to be fine. He's in the common area. He's about to enter the dining room. And he encounters Suzanne again. Again, very beautiful strawberry blonde young woman. So Suzanne says that the doctor told her what happened. And that whoever did this, they left in a hurry. But, I'm off today, and we can go horseback riding. I'm sure that crazy guy isn't hanging around. Lee says that he can't and that he's expecting someone. Suzanne suspects it's Teresa. And she tells Lee that Teresa skipped breakfast, but she's at the lake. Lee thanks Suzanne for snitching Teresa out to him so he can continue his stalking. He calls her a sweetheart, gives her a little kiss on the cheek, saying, thank you so much for helping to make this stalking happen. Lee's saying, I don't need breakfast. I'm going to go swimming in the lake. And Suzanne, once again, just had a little tear in her eye, realizing that maybe her and Lee won't be hooking up. So anyway, Lee reaches the lake. He sees Teresa looking very beautiful in her one-piece bathing suit. Lee dives into the lake here, because it looks like there's kind of a slight cliff here. So Lee's kind of doing a little bit of cliff diving here. And he's thinking that he can't wait to swim out to get her. I have her isolated. She has nowhere to go. Gonna turn the page. However, as Lee thinks he's heading to heaven in the form of Teresa, who's sort of like on this small little isolated dock in the middle of the the lake. Lee, as he dives into the water, he gets caught up in some seaweed here. And the seaweed is as thick as ropes, according to him, and they're actually choking him. So at this point, Lee is entangled in all this seaweed, and he can't break out of it. He looks like he's about to lose consciousness, but then he sees Teresa, and Teresa dived into the water, so Teresa dived into the water, and she's going to rescue Lee. Lee is thinking to himself, go back. I don't want you to sacrifice yourself for me. However, Teresa is determined to do whatever she can. And she's helping to get Lee untangled from all of the seaweed. Lee is losing consciousness. He says, it's hopeless. Nothing can save me now. His thoughts are on Teresa. And his concern isn't that he's going to drown. He's already accepted this. He's concerned that Teresa will drown also trying to save him. Going to turn the page. However, it turns out Teresa is successful in entangling Lee out of the seaweed, and she swims Lee up to the surface. And Lee gasps that breath of life, and he's saying, this was a miracle. You saved me, and it's a miracle because you're a girl. Lee is taking this as more evidence that Teresa is an angel. And he's saying, listen, it can't be a coincidence. You rescued me twice. That kind of means you like me. And you can't deny that to yourself. And that we're made for each other. We belong to each other. But Teresa's like going, no, it's not like that. Lee is becoming very clingy, very early, saying, I'll never let you go. I'm going to hold you. However, Teresa is resisting this. She's not going to be love bombed by this guy. And Teresa's saying, listen, be concerned about your health right now. I want you to focus on taking a rest, take some deep breaths and just relax. Now, I'll meet you later at the park bench at noon. And what will be said there or happen there will explain everything. So anyway, Lee's like all excited. He rested up. He recovered from his near drowning. And, he puts on his best striped pants, and he's ready to meet Teresa. And he arrives at the park bench. Gonna turn the page. And he sees that Teresa is wearing a nun's outfit. I think they're called habits. This one is a little showier than most. It's not fully robed. She's not dressed like a penguin. But nevertheless, it's making it clear that Teresa's a nun, and that she's a nursing nun. So when she entered the order, she entered as a nurse. So she's dedicated her life to another man, but that other man is Jesus. And Lee's saying, no, you can't. What does he have that I don't? Lee's making the case that, hey, if you must feel something for me if you saved me. Because I know that whenever I see an ugly chick and she's in trouble, I don't save them. So Lee doesn't really understand the concept of altruism here. Teresa's dedicated to helping everyone. Lee's taking it as, no, you help who you like, and you just ignore the others. But Teresa's laying the law down. She's upset. She's crying. She's not even making eye contact with Lee here. And she says that, listen, I saved a life because you're alive, but your life isn't any more special than anyone else's. But his life, who I'm talking about, the big J, well, I have to serve because he suffered for me, and I'm simply was kind of going through some things, but now I know that my faith has been strengthened. And Teresa walks away saying that she's going to be happy, and you'll be happy too, Lee, in time. And and then Teresa says, "God bless you" to Lee. Lee's going, "Ugh," and Teresa says goodbye. Gonna turn the page. So Lee's sitting on the park bench. He's alone. He can't understand what happened. What does this Jesus guy have exactly? And he's sitting alone. But then a hand reaches out to Lee, and this hand takes Lee by the shoulder, and it's Suzanne, our very attractive young receptionist. And she tells Lee that, hey, Teresa told me you'll be here and that you'll need me. And then Lee embraces Suzanne. And, Suzanne is like, Lee, I'm the shoulder you can cry on. And, you figure it's kind of a promising start, Suzanne knows she's the rebound, but, hey. But Lee never really had a shot at her, at Teresa to begin with. And that's that crazy story. Take a look at another ad. Underneath is the subscription service where you can get 15 issues for like $3. Jesus, how did they make money? And there's another one for getting a career in airline travel. Like if you want to be a stewardess, which is what flight attendants were called back then, or a pilot. They just kind of just show you how you can train to go into this career. And that's about it. Okay, so I'm going to go into the second story, and it's called The Dating Game. This also looks like it's the same creative team. We're not given who it is, but based on the artwork, I'm assuming that it's probably Rosencrantz or Stern and Vince Colletta and Robert Kanigher probably wrote it. So anyway, we see our protagonist, Norma. Norma is a very beautiful young woman, looks exactly like Jill St. John here. And we see that she's on a college campus here. She's a great student, but she's seeing a lot of couples, and she has not been able to hook up with anyone, despite being really beautiful. Her classmates have noticed this, saying, poor Norma. She's really smart, but she can't get laid. And a girl who's probably jealous of Norma, saying she'll end up being an old maid at 20 years old. So this is weighing on Norma a bit, that she can't find someone to see her in that way. It does remind me of a friend I had who very much wanted to get married. It never happened for her, and the weight of that made her life very unhappy. So I can understand what Norma is going through. Although I do have to say, my friend did not look as beautiful as Norma here. Norma heads home. We see the mom here, kind of a gilf. Mom is kind of hot, despite the George Washington hair. And, she's telling Norma it's really wonderful that you got that full scholarship to college. And Norma's saying, yeah, I guess it is. Not knowing the unhappiness Norma had walking through campus. Gonna turn the page. So anyway, Norma arrives at school. She's living in a dorm. So, and she's meeting her dorm mate for the first time. Her dorm mate is Kathy. She's from Scarsboro. An attractive redhead here. And she's sort of trying to dictate to Norma how things are going to be. She makes the suggestion that, hey, there's a bed that's close to the window, and I kind of don't like that, so you can kind of take that. But I think for the most part, the two get along. So anyway, Norma, she heads for her first class. She's called Norma Bates. Norma Bates. And she introduces herself to the professor, who literally does look like the professor from Gilligan's Island. The professor is aware of Norma. And he's like, I know your achievement. You're here on scholarship. I kind of know that. A little creepy, but nevertheless, I guess he's one of these professors who makes it his duty to know his students beforehand. And based on Norma's academic skills, because again, she's on scholarship, the professor believes that he found the perfect lab mate for her. And it's a guy called Harold, who's a really good-looking guy, kind of looks like Superman here. And the professor's thinking, hey, I kind of see sparks here. I see a little electrical stimulation between the two of you. And we see Harold. He's very polite. He says hi, and he's kind of just focused on the academics here. He's being a little bit chauvinistic by saying, do you know enough chemistry to keep up with me? Because you're a girl. And Norma says, yeah, I'll try. She's placating the guy, the arrogant, obnoxious guy. And it looks like Harold is really happy with Norma as a lab mate, saying that, listen, a job that normally took 4 hours, we did it in 2. So we really work well together. And Harold is asking Norma to go out on a date for tomorrow. And Norma is ecstatic, and she says, it's a date. Gonna turn the page. Take a look at this in-house ad for Plop. Plop, none of the humor magazines from the comic book companies, I never thought they were particularly funny. Largely because comic book writers kind of aren't funny, except for like a few of them, like Peter David, Jim Mateus, and Keith Griffin. I mean, there's a few others, but for the most part, they had bad senses of humor. And but Plop wasn't as bad as most. They were looking to be kind of a second Mad. And then we see emphasis on the 3 female driven comic books from DC: Wonder Woman, Lois Lane, and Supergirl. Saying, listen, girls, we're gonna have these young ladies, with the heroics. And we got your romance covered, and we can have your adventure covered too for 20 cents. So I'm gonna go back to the story. The professor, he's checking on Harold and Norma. Harold speaks the world of Norma, saying, listen, she's the girl for me. But Norma's thinking only in the lab. So at this point, Harold has kind of friend-zoned her. And Norma still wants to take any, this relationship more, because they're clearly friends, they're clearly good lab mates. But she wants a little romance here. But Harold really isn't biting, even though he's a really good-looking guy. Norma is trying to get the conversation away from chemistry, because Harold just wants to talk physics and chemistry and so forth, but Norma wants to talk about other things, and she's finding a great deal of resistance from Harold here, because he just kind of wants to talk about work. And, Norma's saying, you talk about research. How about researching my lips with your lips? And, she's kind of getting frustrated here, but she's still, persisting. Norma is pointing to a young couple on a rowboat who are making out. And Norma is thinking that, hey, is that giving you any ideas? And Harold is saying, yeah, looking at them on the water, thinking about the amount of moisture that is in the air, combined with the overall skies above, we might be looking at a rainstorm. This is the stuff that Harold is thinking about while he's on his date with his beautiful Jill St. John lookalike. I'm going to turn the page. And she's in a bikini. She is sending signals. So anyway, Norma is spying her roommate, Kathy, outside with her date. And it looks like Kathy has no issues with romance. And, Norma's saying, hey, I need to find some answers. And it looks like Kathy knows what she's doing. She's probably a real hoe. And then Kathy enters the room. I guess the date had ended. And she sees that Norma is crying. Kathy is asking Norma, what's happening? And Norma's saying, listen, I can't score with anyone. There's no one out there for me. And I'm trying with Harold. I'm doing everything I can. He's not acknowledging my signals. And I'm kind of thinking that there's no one out there for me. Kathy is saying, listen, that's ridiculous. There is someone out there. You are smoking hot. We just need to change the way you dress. Norma was in a bikini at that picnic. So she sort of knows how to dress in that way. But Kathy's saying, listen, I have this red suit. It is fabulous. You will look like a flame in it. You will flame like an Olympic torch when these guys see you. So anyway, they head to the beach party. And it kind of looks like the beach party at the beginning of Jaws. And we see Norma. She's in the red suit, kind of a red track suit here. Again, she looks beautiful in anything. And then Kathy introduces Norma to a guy called Bill. Bill looks a lot like Harold. Bill, he has the white kayaks pants. He has the polo shirt. He looks all relaxed. And he's wondering, hey, Norma, where have you been all my life? So Bill thinks very highly of Norma at this point. Going to turn the page. So what's happening is that the campfire is going out. And so the only light there is the moonlight. The couples, they're getting closer together. They're either kissing each other or dancing with each other, just holding each other, just enjoying their company. And Bill's like, listen, Norma, I want to enjoy your company too. We don't have the light from the fire, so maybe we'll look for our own light. So Bill is looking to isolate Norma. It looks like Bill is really taken by Norma. Norma is taken by Bill. She takes Bill's embrace. So Bill was getting closer and closer physically. Norma was fine with this. And but even though Norma is enjoying this physical, intimate moment, it's not really matching what she wants, because Bill is not saying anything. He's just quietly putting the moves on her. And he's not being inquisitive. And Norma is missing that. So this is sort of an element that she's missing, that she's not seeing from Bill. Bill's a good-looking guy. He seems fairly polite. But you get a sense that maybe Norma isn't fully connecting with him. I'm going to turn the page. So it's the next day. Norma arrives at the lab. She's talking to the professor here. The professor is noting that Norma is really early. And Norma is kind of like a she's a very studious person. She's an early bird. So Norma's saying, yeah, I figured I can get a little bit of work in before the full day kicked in. It looks like Norma had not been there for a while, though. So it looks like Norma probably had been spending a little time with Bill, caught up in her own little drama with her lack of romance. So maybe she hadn't been around the lab for the past couple of days. That's the impression that I get. The professor is saying, listen, when I'm lonely, I come to the lab too. And if you're in the lab this early, that means, yeah, you're kind of lonely. But Norma then starts mentioning Harold, saying, listen, I know you were trying to help me with Harold, and you thought Harold would be that person. But Harold isn't that person. And, you thought we would be a pair, but we're not. Then the professor, he kind of pours his heart out to Norma, saying that, listen, I've been watching you from afar. I've been grooming you. I mean, I've been following you and studying you, and I really admire you. And I feel that your self-esteem is so low that, me and you, we can hook up. I mean, forget that 25-year age difference. Think of me as the professor on Gilligan's Island. Then the professor proposes to Norma because he sees weakness. This man is a predator. And but then he says, listen, do you want to get married before I give out the final grades? Because, hey, your answer on whether you marry me or not kind of going to affect those grades. And then Norma, she embraces the professor. She's beaten down. And she says, listen, I got to take what I can get. The professor says that you pass, 100%. You wouldn't have gotten that 100% if you didn't do this. So that's the end of that story and that dysfunctional relationship. I don't know. I think they'll make it. Norma doesn't realize, how hot she is. Okay, so I'm going to go to the advice column. It's a weird advice column. It's a guy called Mark. He looks like a complete douchebag. He looks exactly like my junior high school dean, Mr. DeMaglio, who was an opened pedophile. And he would date girls in our junior high school. 14, 15-year-old girls. He was so open about it. This was the late 70s, early 80s, although he continued to be the dean of the school for decades. And just to kind of cover up what had happened with this D-bag, in 1999, a teacher finally stood up to him, and she reported him. And on the night before his disciplinary hearing, in which he was going to get fired and lose his pension and all that, he has a massive heart attack in the shower. So he basically, and of course when the human body expires, it releases all the waste. So this guy died in a toilet of his own making. And this guy, Mark, he kind of looks like DeMaglio, and he kind of sounds like DeMaglio. And apparently what was going on was there was a number of readers who did not like Mark's takes. Feeling, he's being misogynistic. He wasn't taking the letters of advice seriously. He was giving like smart-ass remarks and stuff like that. And there was a poll on whether Mark should continue with his job. So DC was sort of on the fence with this guy, saying, listen, if enough readers write in that they hate your guts and that might affect sales, we're going to let you go. And it turned out that Mark had more fans than detractors. But there was a fair number of detractors. So anyway, Mark is announcing the tally of the vote on whether, or the poll, I should say, on whether he should get fired or not. And it looks like he won that one. So Mark is kind of being a jerk, kind of rubbing it into the ones who wanted him fired, saying, tough titty, I'm still here. And you're going to have to deal with me and my misogyny. So I'm going to start with the first letter It's from Pam. Pam's very supportive of Mark, saying that, both her and her boyfriend, they read these comics and they like the advice that Mark does give. And Pam is saying, listen, your girlfriend is very lucky to have you. So Pam is really into Mark. And yeah, like my pervy dean, there were girls who wanted to be with him. Mark is saying, listen, you said girlfriend, but it's actually girlfriends. I have more than one girlfriend. And Mark is likening himself to Tom Jones, David Cassidy, and Ryan O'Neal, saying, listen, the problems they have with women, I have them too. And he's saying, yeah, any woman who is one of my girlfriends in my stable, they should feel happy. The second letter is a negative one, saying that, you don't give good advice, that you just treat everything like a joke. And she doesn't like the fact that Mark doesn't like short people. He calls short people squirts. And apparently Mark had given some advice where someone had mentioned their height, and Mark was kind of saying, well, it's tough being a little squirt. And Miss Sick of Mark, that's who she's calling herself, is, listen, I'm short, and I'm certainly not a squirt, but you're a clown. And Mark is answering back, well, hooray for you. Hey, you know what? If you got together with Squirt, you'd be a pair of shorts. So Mark being kind of a wise ass there. The next letter is from Janice Soprano. And she says that she used to think that Mark was really good looking guy. But over time, she started thinking that Mark was ugly and immature. And Janice doesn't really like Mark's attitude. And Janice is apparently a student teacher. So anyway, yeah. So Janice is basically going on saying that Mark is just sort of immature and childish. But Janice is also kind of throwing in her resume, saying, listen, I'm a student teacher. My dad's an archaeologist and a professor. So when we say you're a stupid animal, we know what we're talking about. Look at our credentials. And Mark answers back with some positive letters. So Mark is going to let these positive letters speak for him. One person calls himself a fan, saying that Mark has the right to print his feelings and opinions, and he's always fair. And another one is saying, who do you think you are? Charleston Heston? Well, you're not. You make me ill. Oh, so Mark is throwing some negative stuff too. Another one is disgusted, saying, Mark, you're not cool at all, and that you're stuck up. Another one is saying, Mark isn't a human being, he's an animal, and get rid of him, as animals only beget more animals. The next letter is from Mark Forever. And Mark Forever was shocked to hear that there actually were female readers who did not like Mark. This person thought everyone liked Mark, and that Mark gave great advice. And another one, a female fan, is saying, listen, why do you let these children's petty anger bother you? And she's saying that you are a male chauvinist, but there's nothing wrong with that. So this is sort of like a MAGA fan who knows what MAGA is and is saying, hey, not a bad thing. The next letter is from Smarter Than Mark, saying that, they wouldn't write to Mark if Mark were the last man on Earth, and that Mark needs to take a long walk off a short bridge. And Mark is answering back, there are a lot of crackpots here. So when Mark posted those negative letters, he wasn't saying, hey, these fans have a point, or these readers have a point. He was saying, listen, can you believe these nutbags? These nutbags don't think I'm cool. They think I'm obnoxious. They think I'm a jerk. They think I'm ugly. I mean, look at them, really. So that's like Mark's whole spiel. I'll probably read more DC romance just to read what Mark was prattling about. Other ads like for nails. Another one for Blair. This looks like a chapstick company. I guess they're trying to get you to sell these kind of chapsticks. Oh, you send them $12.50 for a beauty kit. And you continue to get products for like $7.50 a month. I think this is sort of like Columbia House but for makeup. And here's one on a diet pills, which are incredibly dangerous. They're probably selling some form of meth here. And that's it. And that is my review of Young Love, issue number 104. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.